welcome to this wonderful conference. Welcome to Cleveland. So our conference theme this year, each year we beat the bushes and we just kind of rack our brains to come up with something that we didn't do last year, something that we didn't say last year, something that's snappy and appropriate and et cetera. And this year we came up with organize, harmonize, and amplify. And as the words of Maya Angelou said, which I quoted in our welcome letter, words mean more than what is set down on paper. It takes human voice to infuse them with deeper meaning. Bring these words to life, infuse these words with meaning. And so that's our charge here. We started off this wonderful journey, this couple of days, with spoken word. Our theme centers around three very simple words, went out of context, but three words that are critically important. The only way for us to achieve many of the goals and objectives that we have to improve ourselves, our lives, our communities, to improve outcomes for our children, youth, and families, is to get ourselves better organized. And you can never be better organized. Is that right? And so that's part of what we hope to instill in all of you today, and we can't wait to hear more and to learn more about your stories of how you're organizing. And of course, we all know what harmony is. You don't have to have a great singing voice, although we all sound good in the shower. Is that right? But harmony is what makes a bunch of kind of disconnected noise actually mean something more. And when we work together, when we sing off of the same sheet of music, regardless of the musical genre, the harmony touches. And so we have to work much, much harder. We're at a time in this country where let's just say, it's not as much harmony as we could use. We need more harmony, that's for sure. And I know that you guys fully agree with that. And then amplify, of course, this is about impact. Because part of why we come together is not just to have a wonderful experience for ourselves personally, although that's great. It's not just to meet people we haven't met before. It's also to tell the story of family and community engagement, to tell the story of our successes, to speak truth to power about what's really important, to move the needle, and to really amplify our impact. And so that's really our purpose for being here today. I have a couple of announcements that I want to go through, some of which are already up on the screen as we continue the program. In your program book, most of this information exists. We definitely want you guys to tweet and to check out and tell your colleagues that we are kind of streaming the plenaries live on Facebook Live. We have a conference hashtag, FCE-CONF. If you could go back to that other slide just for a minute. CONF18. We want you to follow us on Twitter. You see all of our Twitter handles. I'm QuasyBaby58, in case you didn't know that. There's a long story behind that. I won't take up your time with that, but it's a Twitter handle that everybody seems to like. You have the Wi-Fi and username and the Wi-Fi password, so you'll have Wi-Fi throughout the building, and then we can go to the next slide. And we definitely want you to download the conference app. Most of your detailed information about workshops can be found in the conference app, and we'll also be using the app to send out notifications, last-minute stuff that comes up, messaging. Use the app to its fullest extent. It's really easy once you download it and search it and get it going, and you can create your own schedule and do all of those kinds of things. So moving on, I want to bring up Mayor Frank George Jackson, who is currently the 57th mayor of Cleveland, Ohio. He was first elected in 2005, re-elected in 2009, 2013, and 2017. So he is now serving his fourth term, the longest serving mayor in Cleveland history, and obviously he's doing something right. So big round of applause for Mayor Jackson.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. That's part of that harmony. But I want to welcome, and I always read this, the National Family and Community Engagement Conference to the City of Cleveland. And I want to tell you that we're not ingrates in Cleveland. You picked Cleveland, and we are appreciative of the fact that you picked Cleveland because you could have gone anywhere. So again, welcome to Cleveland, and thank you for choosing Cleveland. You know, everything that in line with what I believe your mission and purpose is, everything that we have done in Cleveland and we've been successful at, we've done as a community effort. Everyone has bought into the success or the failure of whatever it is that we decided what we were going to do. And if we did not do it as a community effort and someone took a bye and didn't want to participate, we never fully were able to implement and execute in a successful way. In a greater the challenge that we have, the greater the obstacles that we have to overcome, then that means that that community effort has to be even greater. Because particularly in an urban environment where there is so much going on, so many obstacles, so many challenges, and they're just not obstacles and challenges where people can write theses on or study and then some years later execute on. These are things that change every day. Every day. And if you're not on top of it every day, then you will not be successful. So that means that there has to be full community participation, not only up front in developing the mission and the policy, but full community participation in the execution of whatever it is. And it has to be just the way in which you do business, because it is something that you have to do every day. Now, when he talked about organization is key. I just mentioned about everything that we do in Cleveland successful at is a community effort. When we did the Cleveland plan, the reform of the Cleveland school system, public school system, and the rules of engagement, we had in there, we had the entire community, from Democrats, Republicans, business community, unions, the philanthropic community, charter schools, public schools. We had them all there at the table discussing the issue of how do we have a better outcome for the education of our children. And when we looked at harmony, we fully recognized that it didn't sound good at first. But at the end, we were able to come to an agreement that worked for us in Cleveland, and that people were able to put aside their personal, their organizational, and their institutional self-interest for the purpose. And that purpose was to have a better outcome for the education of our children. And amplify. You have to tell it. You just can't hide it. You have to tell it, and you have to tell it on a daily basis. It is not about just the theory, not just about the concept. It's even more than just the execution and the implementation. It is the ownership of failure. It is the ownership of success. It is the ownership of that child. And when people say to us in Cleveland, Well, you know, Mayor, you know, CEO, you know that these urban challenges around education are so challenging, you know, and it's very difficult to try to figure out what to do. We tell them, just pretend it's your child. It ain't that difficult. So I want to thank you for choosing Cleveland, and welcome. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear welcome remarks from Eric Gordon, who is the CEO of Cleveland Metropolitan School District. He's responsible for the leadership and daily management of Cleveland's 39,000 students since 2011. In 2016, Gordon was honored with the Richard R. Green Council of Great City Schools Award, naming him the Urban Educator of the Year. As I told Eric while we were waiting earlier, today's the day when I felt most like a superintendent in terms of juggling a lot of different things in preparation for something. It's a hard job. I don't want to do it regularly. Please welcome Eric Gordon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, no, I'm a school guy. Good afternoon. I told Kwesi Baby on the way up here that he didn't have to have this be the only time he felt like this, and he promptly said, no, that's okay. You can keep that. My name is Eric Gordon, and I am so proud to be the superintendent and CEO of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. And on behalf of our over 39,000 student scholars and their families and caregivers, welcome to Cleveland, Ohio. Over the past 7 years, under the Cleveland Plan to reform our schools, we have been aggressively implementing a portfolio strategy of school choice with the fundamental belief that parents and families are and should be the active choosers of their children's schools. That schools, not the district, should be the center of learning, and that the central office should be designed to support schools and their families in meeting that academic mission. Two of the principles of our strategy are good options and choices for all families and extensive public engagement. So exemplary family and community engagement is critically important to us here in Cleveland. We're proud of the work we've done to engage our families and communities, including engaging families on our new school design teams, on our school advisory boards, our school parent organizations, and our parent advisory committees. Our specifically designed growth opportunities for parents and caregivers, including the implementation of academic parent-teacher teams in 10 of our schools, the implementation of college credit courses for our parents in partnership with our community college, our year-round Parent University College bus tours, and our Parent Leadership Quarterly Institute, to name just a few. Our community wraparound school strategy, a partnership with the United Way of Greater Cleveland and several other community-based organizations, provides an array of services to our scholars and their families and caregivers, including after-school programs, art and music programming, tutoring, food pantries with healthy cooking classes, mobile health clinics, and legal clinics. We know family and community engagement is working in Cleveland. Over the last 3 school years, CMSD's teachers have reported that they have had meaningful parent engagement experiences, such as parent-teacher conferences, with 90% of our students, parents, and caregivers. And in the last year alone, 2,000 community volunteers, including 22 community and faith-based volunteer groups, have provided literally thousands of hours of support in our schools. And our student scholars are also fully engaged. In fact, members of CMSD's 400 Student Advisory Committee helped plan a regional youth summit, which was held here before the conference began today, and you'll be hearing their voices thread throughout the plenaries over the next 2 days as well. And engagement works. CMSD's off-track attendance is down 14% in just the last 2 years. We saw a 13.7% increase in K-3 literacy improvement, and our graduation rate has increased 20% over the last 6 years, making us the fastest growing That 20% makes us the fastest improving graduation rate among urban school districts in Ohio and among the fastest growing in the nation. We are excited. You can applaud that. We'll take it. We are excited to host over 1,200 people here in this conference this week, including over 130 of our own CMSD parents and caregivers, teachers, and other district and community educators. We look forward to sharing our work with you and, more importantly, learning about your work as well. So thank you again for attending the 5th Annual National Family and Community Engagement Conference, and again, welcome to Cleveland. So you've already met our distinguished gentlemen of the spoken word, and later you'll meet the poets of Wade Park Academy. But now it is my pleasure to introduce Tamara Thomas, who will introduce today's keynote speaker. Tamara, age 17, is a 2018 graduate of Cleveland's Washington Park High School for Environmental Sciences. As a member of Boys and Girls Clubs of Cleveland for more than 7 years, she attended our Broadway Club in the Slavic Village community. This year, Tamara was named the State of Ohio Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year and will represent... Come on up here while I'm bragging about you. And Tamara will represent Ohio in the regional competition next week. So we're going to go win it at regional too, right, Tamara? All right. She is committed to raising awareness and helping her community. She led a Stop the Hate walk at Washington Park and organized a Stop the Hate week in Washington Park's community, Slavic Village, which included a panel with former gang members, a panel about interactions with the police, featuring the chief of our police, Calvin Williams, and a discussion around bullying with a balloon launch to remember those killed by community violence and to honor those who have signed a Stop the Hate pledge. She will be attending Xavier University in Cincinnati in the fall and hopes to become an international lawyer. Ladies and gentlemen, Tamara Thomas.
First, I would like to start by saying thank you, Mr. Rollins, for inviting me. I am very honored to be here. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio my entire life, and I have attended Cleveland Public Schools since I was in 10th grade. I actually did not start in Cleveland Public Schools, though. I attended Catholic schools when I was younger and did not transfer into the district until I enrolled into Washington Park. And we all know that the public school system in general usually has a bad rap. But for me, the experience has not been completely negative. Is there room for improvement? Sure, but there are things that I see that CMSD does well, especially in the area of family engagement. In my experience, the Cleveland Metropolitan School District does a great job informing families on any change that may be happening in the district. That is important because the more informed families are, the more engaged they can be. While attending Washington Park, I was a part of the Ambassador Club. As a member, I was able to meet once a month with the Transformation Coordinator. These meetings were held to inform parents on different issues, changes, and the personal growth of their students. My mom actually attended all of these meetings, and because of that, I was a more engaged student. While everything did not always go smoothly, the partnership my mom held with my school and with the help of the Boys and Girls Club, I was able to graduate in June from Washington Park. And I will also be representing Ohio as the 2018 Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year. So as it says, it does take a village to raise a child. Thank you.
Give another warm round of applause for our young people. So for those of you who've been at this conference before, you know that youth are not necessarily our target audience in terms of participation, but we always strive to have youth voice. And so I'm very proud of these young people. Let's give them a round of applause again. As Eric mentioned, we had a youth summit While some of you were on site visits and at pre-cons and other kinds of things, we had the Youth Summit, and they officially launched their attendance awareness campaign for the school year. They had some loud music and some dancing, and that's when I really felt like an old man when I went in there. So I'm not up on the new, I just don't have the new moves, but that's okay. It's not for everybody. One of the things that we did different this year, if you look at your program book, we decided another way to engage some of the young people in the area was to have an art contest. And rather than go through, as my staff would say, thousands of images, and Kwesi can't make up his mind what he wants on the cover, and they love that process, don't you, guys? Yeah, not so much. We decided to have an art contest. We had a number of schools in Cleveland that participated, and we brought it down to 2 winners. I want to publicly recognize them. And I think we're showing now the runner-up, Terra Nova Ake. Are you here? Terra Nova, don't be shy, come on up. And would you like to say something for a minute or so about your...
Oh, I didn't prepare, but...
what your vision was?
Well, I didn't prepare for this, but I'm nervous. But so the logo that I made, well, it was basically, I was representing my my health teacher. Her name's Miss Sharf, and she would always say in health class, you plant what you grow. And that's basically like, let's say you want to start doing a business or start doing something, and you would do anything to just grow it, right? You just plant what you grow. So, sorry. So yeah, I drew a flower. It was blossoming, and I put, you plant what you grow. So, yeah, and I didn't try hard at all. I did not know I would win, and I'm honored to be here, and I thank you guys very much.
I'm gonna take a picture right here. And so you've already seen the winning drawing, and thanks again, Terra Nova. You've seen the winning drawing because it is on your program book, and it is quite beautiful. And so I want to bring up, it's actually a team, but I think only one of the artists could be here. Sade Williams, are you here? Yes, is that a yes? Come on up. And Ashari Kamal from the Cleveland School of the Arts. And in 30 seconds or less, tell us about your vision.
Hi, I'm Sade. This piece of art is made of wax and dye on fabric. We made it to represent peace. In my art class, we have been working on promoting peace by using effective communication, understanding emotions and conflict, and learning problem-solving skills. We decided to design the dove with a rainbow because we believe the imagery symbolizes what we've learned and what we like to share with others. Thank you.
All right, big round of applause. Okay. And so next up, I want to bring my colleague, Jose, who's going to introduce our keynote speaker. Jose Munoz, who is the director of the Coalition for Community Schools, and he's the latest edition of IEL's senior leadership team, and we're really happy to have him on board. Prior to coming to IEL, Jose led the community schools work in Albuquerque, New Mexico, as executive director of the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Community Schools Partnership, and he's an awesome guy. So, my new coworker, Jose.
All my awesomeness is learned by Kwesi Baby. as my neighbor in the office. So I have a great pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, and who's a great friend of mine. I call her my sister from another mister. Known her for quite some time. I'll give you a couple of highlights of it, then I'll give you the real Julia here. So Julia Baez, she began her career as a middle school Spanish teacher, and then later on in the district, she elevated to a family and community engagement specialist. She's a fast tracker because in 2012, she moved over to serving families with the Family League of Baltimore, and in 2014, just 2 very brief, short years, Julia became the first recipient of a Community School Leadership Award, and right down the road in Cincinnati, Ohio, at a conference there where she was recognized. Julia is now working with the Baltimore's Promise. Yeah, I hear that, Baltimore's Promise. And she's working towards building public will and to advocate for policy on the behalf of Baltimore City's youth. And I'm glad Kwesi and the Family and Community Engagement team for really just taking an emphasis in highlighting our young people, because that's who Julia is all about, just realizing they are the cornerstone of what we're all building upon. And so we appreciate that. But a little bit about Julia, though. You know, if the real Julia, if she was like a fashionista, which she is, she just brings all that sparkle to the work she has in our young people. And if you have any doubt, just take a look at her nails if you get a chance later on, so it calls attention to you. And Julia, if she was a superhero, she has this amazing ability to reach far across both sides of the aisle, whoever you're talking to, and bringing people in. So she would be Elastigirl from the Incredibles. You guys know that person? Yeah, and if she was a musician, a music artist, her favorite artist, Beyonce, yeah, she'll have us all in formation, right? As she organizes, harmonizes, and amplifies, right, Kwesi? Organize, harmonize, and amplify. She's truly a person with a huge heart, someone who walks the walk that she talks. Across the community, it's not uncommon to see Julia actually come out of those offices and reach out to young people, guiding a team of people to keep young people in their focus, working with their families. And she would tell you herself that this is not a job of hers, but this is a lifestyle in which she lives. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Miss Julia Baez.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Jose, and thank you to IEL and the FCE team, especially Kwesi, for inviting me to be part of this wonderful convening. It is truly an honor. And if I had planned, I would have had Beyonce as I walked out. We could have all been dancing together next time. I find these conferences to be rejuvenating for our spirit. We get to spend time learning together and challenge our thinking and connect with our peers across the country and the world. I believe I saw a session being led by folks from Australia. Is that right? Yes, yes, yes? Okay. Anywhere else in the world? Other places? No? Okay, Canada. Great. Some of us will be moving there soon. We understand that the work didn't stop because you jumped on a plane. The family responsibilities didn't change because you made your way to this conference. So the rejuvenation comes at a cost. But as I know from previous IEL efforts, your experience over the next few days will certainly be a reward. One thing we often forget when we come to conferences is to think about the context of the place we sit in. How many of you have experienced conference hotel deja vu? Raise your hands. So you check in, you start walking around, and there's a little voice that says, I think we've been here before, right? Just me? Okay. Then we finish the conference, we're back in our offices, it's a couple months later, and we say things like, oh yeah, that was a great session at that conference a few months ago, wherever we were. Yes? Okay. So we're here together in Cleveland. Hopefully we're all in the right place. We heard from the mayor that Cleveland is an exciting city, focusing on engaging community. It's a medium city, an old manufacturing town like many of the places we all come from. Experienced a housing boom, a growth of diverse economic sectors. I was excited to learn that it was one of the first cities to create a citywide Wi-Fi network, which would be amazing in Baltimore. And of course, it's a beautiful port city, which for an East Coast girl was surprising for me to see out of my hotel window, because we like to think that everyone who is not on the coast is landlocked, but apparently not true. We won't talk about sports, because I'm clear that that never ends well at national conferences. But Cleveland, also like many of our hometowns, certainly true for Baltimore, struggles with the story of deep inequities and a history of systemic and structural racism. Cleveland has one of the highest poverty rates in the country. In 2016, 35% of the residents here were living below the poverty line, and many others hover around it. There is more than a 20 percentage point gap between the achievement of white students and African American and Latino students. In Baltimore, that gap stretches to over 30%. There are other stories here that will also, unfortunately, resonate with us. 4 years ago, a 12-year-old boy, Tamara Rice, was shot and killed by an untrained and unvetted police officer while playing on a playground. We know how that story ended. It ended the same way as the story of Freddie Gray in Baltimore, the same way as the Philando Castile story in Minnesota, an outcry for an accountability, for change, and an uprising. In Baltimore, the day the uprising broke out in our city after the death of Freddie Gray was the same day that the city council passed a unanimous resolution to sustain funding for community schools. From the outside, this would look like a knee-jerk response to a systemic issue. From the inside, advocates and partners knew that the resolution represented years of organizing, years of ways of finding ways to harmonize very different perspectives, and ultimately, some really key stakeholders, kids and families, amplifying the message over and over again. We spent years on this work because this is a long game. Let's remember that the challenges we face in Baltimore, in Cleveland, and in any other city are not challenges that happened overnight, and the solutions will take us just as long to figure out. It was the organizing that laid the foundation for the action the council ultimately took that day. These situations that we face in our communities are not new. You all have been on the front lines of advocating for change for decades. You have amplified the need at every level. Now we come together to organize our individual efforts because we know that there is power in numbers. Look around the room. We are powerful. You know why this is hard work? It's hard to be a parent. I have 2 little ones. I've been talking to them for the only 12 hours I've been away from them, and I can only imagine what some of you have also been doing. It's hard to be an educator. It's hard to be a kid, and it's hard to be an advocate. It's hard to be the voice of opposition in your community, in your school, in your boardroom, when you challenge the status quo. Nobody promised us easy, but you all showed up here anyways. The work we do together as families, practitioners, and students is under attack. The very notion of the value of family, the connection between a child and their parent, is being challenged at the highest levels of leadership in our country. The gains many of us have made in advocating for supportive policies in ESSA are being challenged or underfunded. Our work lives in this context. Context matters. Why? Because nothing along the continuum of history has been given without a fight. We are here to strategize, but let's recognize we are also here to organize. It is only together that our voices will be heard, loud enough in harmony, demanding the action needed to change the outcomes for our communities. I want to share 2 quick stories before I finish up around the fight that we faced together. The first was recently as the primaries were gearing up in my state and in many others across the country. I was reading all the flyers in my mailbox, which there were many of, and checking out the website of different candidates. I attended a few forums, and I hadn't really heard anything new. I was disappointed and very disengaged in the local process. I then caught word of the change in the New York 14th Congressional District. Anybody else? Yes? Not my city, not my state, but in that primary, what will soon be the youngest woman ever in Congress was elected. Her campaign was about recognizing the power in the people, the power in the community. Her success came from organizing, knocking on doors, showing up, and having the hard conversations. One of her campaign videos asked the question, how can someone who doesn't drink the water we drink or breathe the air we breathe know us and know our struggles? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is her name, and she is 28 years old. Her message is simple. We should not accept that in this country, we cannot do better for those who need it most. She was quoted in one of the many videos I've recently watched as saying, where there is a fight, there is hope. We must be prepared to fight. Her campaign has reminded me of 2 things. First, we can't always find inspiration. Sometimes we are responsible for creating it. Second, the power of relationships. Big money, big corporations, and big politics forgot that folks want to know that you are in the battle with them. Our families, our schools, and our communities aren't asking for someone else to tell them what's wrong. They're asking to be a partner in figuring it out, and they're asking to be heard. Look at the power we have when we organize those voices. When students across Baltimore protested in our city after the death of Freddie Gray, they weren't out for destruction, as some would like to categorize the uprising. They were demanding a seat at the table. They were asking to be seen. Our work is to both help create those tables and to get out of the way of the progress. The second story is about a recent trip I took. 2 months ago, I visited Israel and the West Bank. This was a life-changing experience for me and challenged my own assumptions and beliefs in ways I wasn't even aware of. I was fortunate enough to be part of a group of diverse leaders from Baltimore, Chicago, and San Francisco, traveling together and learning together on this journey. On this trip, I met Israeli and Palestinian leaders representing very different perspectives on the idea of peace and reconciliation. There was one message that I continue to struggle with to this day. One of our last speakers on this trip talked about the ongoing attempts at peace in the region and shared that in the history of the world, there has never been such a thing as peace. He goes on to say, there have been times when those in power have been more effective in the oppression of the opposition, but there has never been peace. And so as this gentleman was explaining this to our group, he says, there's no blueprint for the peace required in the Middle East. The fight is not about geography, not about a land deal. It is about the core identity and freedom of individuals. As I wrestled with that notion, the idea of peace, over the past couple months, it was this conference that made me come to some resolutions for myself. The first is while the idea of not having a blueprint is daunting, it's also freeing. We came here together to this conference to share things we created when there was nothing. We came here today to learn from others because their wisdom and their experience can inform us. You can't take your presenters home with you, but they can spark the change needed to give you the freedom to dream and rethink or retool the approach you currently have. The second lesson is love, a simple concept, but one we fail to hold ourselves, our leaders, and each other accountable to. What could we amplify with a little love? What could we not? I think of my favorite quote by Dr. King. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So in closing, I ask 3 things of each of you for this week and for the conference. The first, know the history, remember the place, and understand the context. Second, strategize with each other, share best practices, but challenge yourselves to organize in ways that lift our collective voice and amplify our collective power. And finally, be relentless warriors of love. In all the hate that surrounds us and challenges us each day, there has been no possible solution greater than the idea that we love others as much or better than we love ourselves. Thank you.
Powerful message. So next up, I would like to bring Ann Henderson, who is the Vice Chair of the Board of the National Association for Family, School, and Community Engagement, and one of our deep thought leaders, mentors, conspirators, etc. I mean, Ann, and all of her important work and her work with Dr. Karen Mapp, who you'll see later in the conference, has just been so important to the field, so important to the movement, and we're going to hear from her briefly, and she's going to talk a little bit about the NAFC membership campaign. Ann?
Another day, I take your pain away.
Like that co-conspirator. You know, it's at times like that where I feel I must be one of the luckiest people in the world to be able to come to things like this, do the work I do, see all my wonderful friends and colleagues, so many of you out there I've worked with over the years. We're really building a field, aren't we? And one of the hallmarks of a field, of course, is to have regular events where we come together and strategize and harmonize and figure out how to amplify our voice and make ourselves be heard. And so, wow. But another thing that builds a field is having an association, having something we can join and be part of, that's a learning community, that advances our work, that lets the world know how important it is on behalf of all of us. How many of you were at the conference last year in San Francisco? All right, wasn't it great? And maybe you're not even aware, but everyone who came last year was automatically made a member of NAFSC. We're not in a position to do that again this year, but I hope that you will join us out of your own sense of importance of this as you as a professional who wants to advance this work and make what we do really universally practiced everywhere. That is our vision at NAFSC. And everybody who signs up or renews, and we hope all of you who were made members last year will renew this year, will get this beautiful t-shirt. Colorful, that you can wear as a badge of pride. So NAFSC's mission is to create a world where engaging families is universally practiced as an essential strategy to improve student learning, create great schools, and make our communities vibrant, healthy places that advance equity. And our mission on how to do that is to really work hard to advance high impact policy and practice that promotes children's development and learning. So if you believe in that and want to be part of a vibrant learning community that's advancing this work all over the country, please join us, and we'll be delighted to give you one of these beautiful t-shirts. Thank you.
So we started out with some powerful young men, distinguished in fact, and now we are going to close with some powerful young ladies. Please join me in welcoming the Wade Park Poets, who are from Cleveland Metropolitan School District's Wade Park Pre-K to 8 school. They are bronze medalists in the annual America Scores Cleveland Poetry Slam Contest.
What they talking about being a girl? We all know about being a girl. Who run the world? Girls. Who run the world? Girls. As you can see, girls run the world. Who run the world? Girls. Who run the world? Girls. Who run the world? Girls. Girls are dreamers.
Girls are shy.
Girls are quiet.
Girls are smart.
Girls are... That's all.
And for all you men in the audience, including the distinguished gentlemen, who rules the world? All right. So apparently they were paying attention. Let's give them a warm round of applause. So I have a few announcements that I want to make before sending you guys off. We have a networking reception right outside this room at 5 o'clock. Somewhere along this corridor, if you haven't been already, we have a bookstore that has all kinds of great books for sale. We have a book signing at 8 a.m. by Joy Moore, who's Wes Moore's mom, hosted by the Campaign for Grade Level Reading and Attendance Works. And you forgot to announce your breakfast, and I have it on there, so you're good to go. We have a breakfast tomorrow morning from 8 to 9. The NAFC membership meeting, which room is that going to be in, Ann, do you know?
26A.
In room 26A, which is across the hall. So if you're coming to the membership meeting, and it's an open house and membership meeting, so pick up your breakfast and go in and find out more. And you can also visit their exhibit table outside for more details. As you've seen, we have official photographers and videographers running around, and so smile for the camera. And then take pictures of your own, on your own camera, and please post on social media. I really want to thank all of our sponsors and partners, and none of this is really possible without a lot of hard work, and certainly the work of our partners and sponsors helps to make this happen. We also want to thank our exhibitors. Please visit them and strike up a conversation and find out more about what it is they have to offer. Do we have members of our local planning committee in the building? If you'd stand and wave. I can't quite see, but none of this is possible. They're around here somewhere. Let's give them a round of applause anyway. And so for months now, we've met with wonderful people from not just Cleveland Metropolitan School District, but from local partners, from folks in the Cleveland First Ring, which is kind of the first ring of suburbs that has about 14 or 15 different districts. They're all part of this region, and they volunteered. They helped us stuff bags. They helped us fold those T-shirts. I even folded a few T-shirts, so if you had a medium, it was probably folded by me. I had to learn how to do that well, but it shows that I'm still learning. I'm a lifelong learner, so I learned how to fold T-shirts, right? And so we're really grateful to our local planning committee. Somewhere in there, I can't see because of the bright lights, is my team, is the IEL team. Where are you? Come forward. Somewhere, are you standing in the back? They're trying to be shy. But you know, none of this happens. It's so funny because all day yesterday, people telling me, "Oh, you must be tired. Oh, you get some rest. Oh, poor Kwesi." Is like, man, these guys are the ones that make me look good. They're doing the heavy lifting. They did the heavy lifting. Let's give them a round of applause. And as I always say, everything that has gone right about this meeting is because of them, and everything that goes wrong is my fault. So come see me with all of your complaints, and don't worry my people to death, please. The buck stops with me. So thanks so much to them. Don't forget to tweet. Use the hashtag. We have a daily evaluation. There's a prompt on your app, and you'll get some notifications of that. And please do use your app. There's lots of good information there. You'll find links to your workshop information and presenters and et cetera. You'll also find last-minute notifications of things that came up that are worth your knowing that weren't somehow already printed in advance. And I think I have done everything I was supposed to do. So, welcome to Cleveland. Have a great conference.